Hello, I'm Raffaello. I'm one of the co-founders at Therapy Central. Therapy Central is a counseling, psychotherapy, CBT and mindfulness practice in central London. And today we're going to talk about anxiety. Anxiety is one of the most common issues that people come to therapy for, and it's in fact something that affects around 10 million people in the UK. The points we're going to talk about today are 5. We're going to talk about what anxiety is, how and why we experience it, when anxiety becomes a problem, what we can do to start managing it, and finally, we're going to wrap it up thinking about how we can take control back from anxiety. What is anxiety? First of all, anxiety is a normal emotion. It's one of the many emotions that we are equipped with since we were born. It's like joy, frustration and anger, sadness, happiness, fear. Anxiety is a complex form of fear, in fact. When we feel anxious, there is a complex response into the whole of our body. It can start with our heart that starts racing and pumping faster to pump more blood into our veins. It can increase our breathing rate. We can hyperventilate because we need more oxygen. It can also feel like a sensation of tensions or pins and needles in our muscles. And this is called the fight or flight response. And the reason we have it is because our body is preparing to face a danger, either by fighting it or by trying to run as fast as we can to defend us from this danger. So in this sense, anxiety is a very, very important emotion. It's a defense against danger. Why do we feel anxious? How does that happen? The greatest majority of the times, there is a specific reason why we feel anxious. If we stop and think about the last time we felt anxious, probably a thought or an image popped into our mind that made us feel afraid and anxious. For example, if we are going to take the tube in the underground station and we're just there at the platform, and we start to feel really, really anxious, we start to feel our heart racing and we start to breathe faster, it's probably because there is a thought in our mind about something really bad that is going to happen as we get into the train. The issue is that anxiety is activated, that difficult emotion is activated by some form of negative thought that pops into our mind. The more we believe that these thoughts are real, the more we think that that negative event might actually happen, the more we experience that sensation of anxiety. And that's only normal, isn't it? If I really believe that if I get into the train, something horrible is going to happen, it's only natural and normal that I want to defend myself from this situation. And so most of the time, I will end up leaving the station and not going where I needed to go. The issue is that most of the time we overestimate the probability that that event that popped into our mind is going to happen. And that's why we continue to feel anxious. The issue is that our minds produce thoughts most of the time randomly at a daily basis. And in the greatest majority of the time, we don't really have full control on what our minds produce. So if we only could be able to critically evaluate those thoughts, to realize what is making us feel anxious, we could start to take back control from anxiety. So number 3, when does anxiety become a problem? As we said, anxiety is a natural, normal emotion, and it's undesirable to never feel anxious because it can be really helpful in actually dangerous situations. But anxiety can also become a debilitating problem. Anxiety becomes a problem really when it impairs our ability to live our normal lives. In the example from before, if all the time that I get to the tube station, I feel that strong emotional anxiety that makes me leave the station, that might lead to some very difficult situations, like, for example, me not being able to go to work or to see friends and family and take part in social events. And when that happens, we get stuck in what is called a vicious cycle. So anxiety is not per se a problem, but it is when it doesn't allow us to live our normal everyday lives. Next point is, what can we do to help with anxiety? As we said, anxiety can happen in everyday situations, when we're going to work or school, where we're going to see friends, or sometimes even when we are on our own at home. So the first thing that we can do is to start having a clear understanding of what are the triggers, what are the situations that make us feel anxious. Think critically about those thoughts, those images that come into our mind before we start feeling anxious. As we said before, one of the reasons why anxiety sets in is because we give too much credibility to those thoughts. We believe that those thoughts are real. And if I really believe that something horrible is going to happen if I enter that train, then it's only normal that I feel anxious. So something that we can do as we're feeling anxious is asking ourselves, what is making me feel anxious? And what evidence is there to tell us that what we think is going to happen will actually happen? Doing this can already be enough to sort of put a brake to that intense reaction of anxiety. The other way to deal with it is to remember that thoughts and reality are two very, very different things. We often don't really look critically at this point, and we just take for granted that whatever we think might correspond to reality. But let's try and do this together. Let's try right now thinking about a beautiful beach, or thinking about a loved one that is sitting right next to us. Probably if we think these thoughts, these images, we might feel a positive emotion. You know, when we think about positive things, we often feel positive emotions. And the same goes if we start to think about bad things happening, like for example losing somebody or a fire starting in the very room we are. If we think those thoughts, we might immediately feel a sense of negativity, a negative emotion. But most of the time we let it go because we know that the beach is not there, that person is not there, or alternatively, that the fire is not there and that person is not lost. So the same can be done when we feel anxious every day. If I am at a platform just taking the train and a difficult thought comes in about something bad happening as I get into the train, reminding ourselves that that is just a thought, it's not reality, and it's us believing that that thought will actually happen that sucks us into a cycle of anxiety. The most precious thing to take away from this really is the fact that thoughts and reality are two very, very different things. So what can we do to take control back from anxiety? It might feel really difficult to deal with anxiety when we are alone, and no one should face anxiety on its own. But first of all, let's remember, anxiety is normal, is a natural emotion that we're all born with. In fact, it's extremely important to feel anxious because it can defend us from danger. Nonetheless, anxiety can become a very big problem when it starts to impair our ability to live our everyday normal life, the life that we want with our friends, with our family, with our work. There are a few things that we can do on our own to try and deal with anxiety. First of all is try and challenge those difficult thoughts that come into our mind, the thoughts that make us feel anxious. And the other one is really remembering that thoughts are just thoughts. They're not reality. They come to our mind, and our mind is largely not under our control. You can try this with a friend. Start talking to someone, not leaving this just to yourself. Ask a friend, for example, to come with you to the tube station, if that is an example that fits with you, or in any other situation in which you feel anxious, and ask them what they think about those difficult thoughts that you have. And maybe you will find that that will help you believe in them a little bit less, which will make you feel less anxious. But if that doesn't work, ask for professional help. At Therapy Central, we can provide you with a safe space, with a non-judgmental ear, with the expert help to help you deal with your anxiety. Change starts with talking.